The Cosmic Cartographers. Chief Cartographer Zix Varen stared at the holographic display, his four eyes narrowing in frustration. The three-dimensional star map of the Orion Arm rotated slowly before him, complete in almost every detail except for one conspicuous void, a blank spot roughly 2,000 light-years across. "Impossible," he muttered, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking softly as he shifted his weight. "Every sector must be mapped. This is unacceptable." Zix Varen had served the Galactic Cartography Guild for over 300 cycles. In that time, he had personally overseen the mapping of 17 previously uncharted sectors. His meticulous work had earned him the prestigious position of Chief Cartographer aboard the Stellar Compass, the most advanced mapping vessel in the Guild's fleet. The Stellar Compass hung in high orbit above Centauri Prime, the administrative hub for this quadrant of the galaxy. The massive vessel, nearly 5 kilometers in length, housed the most sophisticated scanning equipment known to the Galactic Confederation. Nothing should be beyond its capabilities. Yet there it was, the void in their knowledge. The human sector. "Director Elteris requests your presence in the conference chamber," Chief Cartographer announced his assistant, Trill, her tendrils gently undulating in the ship's artificial gravity. Zix Varen's carapace shifted to a troubled blue hue. "This is about the human sector, isn't it?" "The director didn't specify," Trill replied diplomatically. The conference chamber was already filled with the mapping expedition's senior staff when Zix Varen arrived. Director Elteris, a tall, willowy being from the methane swamps of Faroon, stood at the head of the oval table. Her translucent skin revealed the complex circulatory systems beneath, pulsing with anxiety. "Ah, Chief Cartographer, please join us," she said, gesturing to an empty seat. "I've called this meeting to address our situation with the human territories." "With respect, Director," said Science Officer Quill, his tentacles twitching, "there is no situation. We simply need to dispatch probe arrays into their sector and complete our mapping assignment." Director Elteris's skin darkened slightly. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. The humans have explicitly denied us permission to map their space." A shocked silence fell over the room. "Denied permission?" Zix Varen's voice rose an octave. "On what grounds?" "The Treaty of Unified Cartography clearly states that all signatories must allow comprehensive mapping for safe navigation and scientific advancement." "The humans signed the treaty with a significant exception," replied Director Elteris. "They negotiated an exclusion zone encompassing all their claimed territories." Navigation Officer Shenra slammed her scaled fist on the table. "That's outrageous. How are we supposed to establish safe hyperspace routes without proper cartography?" "They've provided their own navigational beacons and route data," said Director Elteris, "but they refuse to allow our probes or vessels to conduct independent surveys." Zix Varen's mind raced. In 3 centuries of service, he had never encountered such a bizarre restriction. Even the notoriously secretive Exilian Conclave had eventually permitted mapping of their space after appropriate diplomatic pressure. "What reason do they give?" he asked. Director Elteris shifted uncomfortably. "They cite unique spatial phenomena within their territories that could potentially damage our equipment or endanger our personnel." Science Officer Quill scoffed. "Ridiculous. Our equipment is designed to withstand everything from Class 9 radiation storms to temporal rifts." "Nevertheless," continued the director, "they have been quite firm. The Confederation Council has decided to respect their wishes, at least for now." Zix Varen couldn't accept it. The blank space on the map called to him like a physical ache. "Director, perhaps a diplomatic mission. I could personally meet with human representatives to address their concerns." Director Elteris considered the suggestion. "Actually, that might be possible. The humans have invited a Confederation delegation to their primary world, Earth, for a cultural exchange next standard month. I could arrange for you to join as our representative." "I would be honored," said Zix Varen, his carapace shifting to a more positive green hue. 3 weeks later, Zix Varen found himself descending through Earth's atmosphere aboard a diplomatic shuttle. His research on humans had been fascinating yet perplexing. A biologically unremarkable species by galactic standards, they had nevertheless advanced from primitive technology to interstellar travel in an astonishingly brief period. Less than 500 years. More curious still, they had refused all offers of technological assistance upon first contact with the Confederation 2 decades earlier. Most emerging species eagerly embrace such opportunities, but humans had insisted on developing their technologies independently, only engaging in selective knowledge exchange. The shuttle touched down at a facility called the International Spaceport in a region humans called Switzerland. Zix Varen was met by Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, a dark-haired human female who greeted him with practiced diplomacy. Chief Cartographer Zix Varen, welcome to Earth, she said, extending her hand in what his cultural briefing had explained was a customary human greeting. I hope your journey was comfortable. Most agreeable, Ambassador Rodriguez, he replied, carefully grasping her hand with his upper right appendage. Your world appears quite beautiful from orbit. We're rather fond of it, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Let me show you to your accommodations. Tomorrow, you'll meet with representatives from our space administration to discuss your cartographic interests. The following day, Zix Varen found himself in a sleek conference room, facing 3 serious-looking humans. Admiral Y. Chen of the Terran Defense Force, Dr. Sophia Mbeki of the Advanced Physics Directorate, and Director James Okafor of the Space Administration. Let me be direct, Chief Cartographer, said Admiral Chen after the formalities concluded. We understand your professional interest in mapping our sector, but our policy remains unchanged. Human space is off-limits to external mapping expeditions. Zix Varen had anticipated resistance, but the Admiral's bluntness surprised him. With respect, Admiral, this blank spot creates significant navigational hazards for interstellar traffic. The Confederation has always. We provide all necessary navigational data, interrupted Director Okafor. The designated travel corridors through our space are clearly marked and maintained. There have been 0 navigational incidents involving Confederation vessels following our protocols. It's not merely about navigation, Zix Varen countered. Scientific understanding, resource surveys, anomaly detection, comprehensive mapping serves many vital functions. Dr. Mbeki leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. We understand your perspective, Chief Cartographer, but you must understand that human space contains unique properties that don't translate well to standard Confederation mapping protocols. What properties? Asked Zix Varen. If you could explain the specific phenomena, perhaps we could adapt our techniques or equipment. The 3 humans exchanged glances before Admiral Chen spoke. That information is classified under Directive 7 Alpha. I'm not authorized to elaborate further. Zix Varen's frustration mounted. May I remind you that the Confederation has encountered virtually every known spatial phenomenon in the galaxy. Black holes, quantum filaments, subspace rifts, temporal anomalies. Our equipment is designed to safely map them all. Not these, said Dr. Mbeki with unsettling certainty. The meeting continued for another hour, but Zix Varen made no progress. The humans remained polite but absolutely unyielding. When it concluded, he felt more confused than ever. Over the next week, while attending various diplomatic functions, Zix Varen began to notice peculiarities about human behavior and their planetary defenses. Their orbital platforms seemed oriented to monitor both incoming and outgoing traffic with equal vigilance. Their military vessels patrolled regular patterns not just at the borders of their space, but throughout it, as if watching for something within their own territory. During a reception at the Confederation Embassy, Zix Varen found himself in conversation with a junior human scientist named Dr. Marcus Kim, who had consumed several glasses of a human intoxicant called whiskey. You know, it's not that we don't trust you folks, Dr. Kim said, his speech slightly slurred. It's just that some things are better left unmeasured. I don't understand, said Zixverin. Dr. Kim glanced around before continuing in a lowered voice. Did you ever wonder why we expanded so quickly after achieving FTL? Most species take centuries to establish a significant interstellar presence. We did it in decades. I had attributed it to your species' characteristic. Enthusiasm, Zixverin replied diplomatically. Dr. Kim laughed, a sound with little humor in it. Necessity, not enthusiasm. You don't build walls because you want to, but because you need to. Before Zixverin could press further, Dr. Kim was called away by a stern-faced official who shot a suspicious glance at the chief cartographer. That night, unable to sleep in his embassy quarters, Zixverin reviewed all available data on human expansion. Dr. Kim was correct. Their colonization pattern was highly unusual. Most species expanded outward in a roughly spherical pattern from their homeworld. Human expansion, however, had been rapid and directional, claiming territories in seemingly random patterns across a vast swath of space. Except the pattern wasn't random at all, Zixverin realized with growing unease. They appeared to be establishing a perimeter around something. His diplomatic mission lasted another Earth week, yielding no further concessions on mapping rights. As his shuttle lifted off from Earth for the return journey, Zixverin stared down at the blue-green world with new eyes. The humans were hiding something. Something significant enough to risk diplomatic friction with the entire Confederation. Aboard the Stellar Compass, Zixverin called his most trusted team members to his private study. Trill, his assistant, Quill, the science officer, and Nora, the senior xenoanthropologist. I believe the humans are concealing something potentially dangerous, he explained, sharing his observations and suspicions. Their defensive posture, expansion patterns, and absolute refusal to allow mapping all point to a deliberate containment strategy. Containment of what? Asked Nara, her feathered crest rising with concern. Unknown, admitted Zixverin, but significant enough that they've organized their entire interstellar presence around it. What do you propose? Asked Quill. Zixverin's carapace darkened to a determined purple. The Cartography Guild's primary directive is to map all navigable space for the safety and advancement of all species. If the humans are concealing a threat, we have a responsibility to investigate. The director would never authorize an unsanctioned mission into human space, Trill pointed out. Which is why we won't be asking for authorization, said Zixverin. I'm proposing a covert mapping expedition using one of our stealth probes. Silence fell over the room as his three colleagues processed the implications. What Zixverin was suggesting could end all their careers, or worse, trigger a diplomatic incident with the humans. I'll program the probe personally, Quill finally said. Our new quantum-shielded models should be undetectable to human sensors. I'll analyze the human patrol patterns to identify the optimal insertion point, offered Nara. Trill hesitated longest before nodding. I'll create a false maintenance schedule to cover the probe's absence. Then it's decided, said Zixverin, feeling both dread and determination. In 10 cycles, we'll send our probe into human space and discover what they're hiding from the galaxy. Little did they know that their decision would uncover horrors beyond their comprehension and reveal why humanity stood alone as guardians at the edge of cosmic nightmare. The abyss stares back. The quantum-shielded probe slipped silently into human space, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it virtually undetectable. Back aboard the Stellar Compass, Zixverin and his conspirators monitored its progress from a secured section of the cartography lab they had isolated from the main ship's systems. Remarkable, whispered Science Officer Quill as the first data streams arrived. The probe is encountering spatial distortions unlike anything in our records. The holographic display showed rippling waves of energy flowing through supposedly empty space. Matter itself seemed to flex and warp in patterns that defied standard physics. More disturbing still were the readings of background radiation, complex and structured in ways that suggested intelligence rather than natural phenomena. Are those artificial constructs? Asked Nara, pointing to massive structures appearing at the edge of the probe's sensor range. Zix-Verin magnified the image. They appear to be containment nodes of some kind. Look at the energy signatures. They're generating some type of barrier field. As the probe ventured deeper into human territory, the anomalies increased in frequency and intensity. The data showed vast networks of monitoring stations, defense platforms, and energy projectors arranged in overlapping fields throughout human space. Some were visible to conventional sensors, but others existed partially in subspace or other dimensional planes. They've militarized their entire sector, Trill said, her tendrils contracting with anxiety. But against what? The answer came 3 days into the probe's mission when it approached what the navigational data identified as the TA-CD system. The probe's sensors detected a massive energy signature at the system's edge, a construct of staggering proportions stretching across millions of kilometers. Magnify and enhance, ordered Zix-Verin. The image clarified, revealing what appeared to be an enormous containment facility built around something. The structure defied easy description: part space station, part energy web, part dimensional anchor. It pulsed with power outputs that exceeded anything in Confederation records. "What are they containing?" whispered Nera. Before anyone could respond, the probe's sensors detected a disturbance. The space beyond the containment structure wasn't empty. It writhed and bulged against the energy barriers, as if something massive was pressing against the fabric of reality itself. "Redirect the probe closer," instructed Zix-Verin, his voice tight with apprehension. As the probe approached, its sensors began to malfunction. Data became corrupted, transmissions fragmented. But what they could see was enough to send cold dread through all 4 of them. Beyond the human containment field was a tear in spacetime, a rift into something that their instruments couldn't properly measure or define. It wasn't simply another dimension or universe. It was something fundamentally incompatible with ordered reality. And it was alive. Vast tendrils of not-quite matter reached from the rift, pressing against the human-made barriers. The energy readings suggested a consciousness of impossible scale, ancient, alien, and utterly hostile to life, as the galaxy understood it. "By the ancestors," Quill whispered, his tentacles trembling. "The humans aren't hiding anything from us. They're protecting us from that." The probe began to transmit visuals from the other monitoring stations it had passed. Each revealed similar containment structures of varying sizes, all restraining tiers in reality. The pattern became clear. Humanity had expanded its territory to encircle dozens of these rifts, creating a quarantine zone around cosmic horrors. "The barriers are failing in some sections," Nera noted, pointing to fluctuating energy readings. "They're constantly rebuilding and reinforcing them." Zix-Verin felt his exoskeleton grow cold as realization dawned. That's why they expanded so rapidly. They were racing to contain these breaches before whatever lies beyond could fully enter our reality. A new alert flashed on their console. The probe had been detected. Multiple human vessels were converging on its position, weapons hot. "Evasive protocols engage," reported Trill. They watched tensely as the probe attempted to retreat, but the human vessels were faster than anticipated. A focused energy burst struck the probe, disrupting its cloaking field. A second burst disabled its engines. "They're not destroying it," observed Quill. "They're capturing it." The feed from the probe continued for another 7 minutes as it was brought aboard a massive human vessel. They glimpsed armored humans in containment suits entering the probe's chamber before the transmission abruptly terminated. "They'll trace it back to us," said Trill, fear evident in her voice. Zix-Verin nodded grimly. "We knew the risks." They didn't have long to wait. Less than 6 hours later, a fleet of human warships emerged from hyperspace and surrounded the stellar compass. The ship's captain, unaware of Zix-Verin's unauthorized mission, demanded an explanation. Before Zix-Verin could confess, the ship's communication system activated. A stern human face appeared on the main view screen. Admiral Weichen, whom Zix-Verin had met on Earth. Chief Cartographer Zixverin, said the Admiral, his expression grim. You and your co-conspirators will surrender yourselves immediately. Your probe has compromised a containment zone and put both our peoples at risk. Zixverin stepped forward. I take full responsibility, Admiral. My colleagues acted under my orders. Irrelevant. All 4 of you will transfer to our vessel now. Your captain will be informed that you are being detained for violating treaty restrictions. Aboard the human flagship Vigilant Sentinel, Zixverin and his team were escorted to a secure conference room rather than the brig they had expected. Admiral Chen was waiting, along with Dr. Sophie Mbeki and several military officials. You have placed us in an extremely difficult position, began Admiral Chen without preamble. Your probe's intrusion destabilized the quantum barriers in containment zone Ta-7. We've had to divert significant resources to reinforce it. Admiral, said Zixverin, his carapace shifting to the deep blue of formal apology. We now understand the gravity of the situation. What we witnessed is beyond your comprehension, interrupted Dr. Mbeki. Those rifts lead to spaces between universes, voids where the laws of physics as we understand them break down. The entities that dwell there have been attempting to enter our reality for millions of years. Why hasn't the Confederation been informed? Asked Nara. Surely with our combined resources. We tried, said a new voice. An elderly human entered the room, walking with the aid of a cane. Admiral, Doctor, he nodded to his colleagues before addressing the aliens. I am Dr. Richard Yamamoto, former director of First Contact Protocols. When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel, Dr. Yamamoto explained, we discovered the rifts immediately. Our early exploration vessels were lost. Those that returned brought back crews driven mad by what they had witnessed. We realized the danger and established the first containment protocols. When we made contact with the Confederation, he continued, we presented our findings to the Council. They dismissed our concerns as the hysterical fears of a primitive species. The Valaxian counselors suggested our limited understanding of quantum physics had led us to misinterpret natural phenomena. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. We invited Confederation scientists to observe the rifts firsthand. The 3 vessels they sent were lost with all hands. One managed to transmit data before being destroyed, data that caused panic among certain council members. What happened? Asked Quill. The council classified all information relating to the rifts, said Dr. Mbeki. They ordered us to contain the problem without informing the general Confederation population. They promised resources but delivered nothing, fearing mass panic if the truth became known. So humanity took on this burden alone. Zixverin realized aloud. We had no choice, said Admiral Chen. The rifts were in our sector. If the entities broke through, our worlds would be the first to fall. Dr. Yamamoto nodded solemnly. We've lost thousands of people maintaining the containment fields. Our entire economy is structured around producing the energy and technology needed to hold back the void. Every human child grows up knowing they might be called to serve on the barrier fleet. Zixverin's carapace shifted to the purple of deep shame. The Confederation owes humanity an immeasurable debt. The Confederation, said Admiral Chen coldly, prefers comfortable ignorance to uncomfortable responsibility. What happens now? Asked Trill. Will you execute us for what we've learned? Dr. Mbeki actually laughed, a short, bitter sound. Execute you? No, you're going to help us. The Council still refuses to acknowledge the threat, explained Dr. Yamamoto. But the rifts are growing more unstable each year. Our models predict catastrophic failure within the next century unless we develop new containment technologies. We need the Confederation's resources, Admiral Chen admitted. But we can't get them without breaking the Council's classification order. Zixverin understood immediately. You want us to reveal what we've discovered. The Cartography Guild has significant political influence, nodded Dr. Yamamoto. Your testimony could force the Council to acknowledge the crisis and commit resources to a unified containment strategy. There would be significant resistance, warned Zixperin. The economic and social impact of such a revelation would be nothing compared to what happens if those barriers fail, interrupted Admiral Chen. We've held the line for 2 centuries, but we cannot do it alone indefinitely. A heavy silence fell over the room as the 4 Confederation citizens contemplated what was being asked of them. Their careers would certainly be destroyed. They might face prosecution, imprisonment, or worse. If we do this, said Zixperin finally, what guarantees do we have that humanity will share control of the containment operations? Your species has managed this burden alone for a long time. Would you truly accept Confederation oversight now? Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. Chief Cartographer, we are not seeking to maintain our monopoly on existential dread. We would welcome the chance to share this nightmare with others. Dr. Mbiki nodded. Our children deserve to look up at the stars with wonder again, not with the knowledge that they represent a perimeter to be defended at all costs. Zixperin turned to his companions. Nara nodded first, followed by Quill. Trill hesitated longest, but finally inclined her head in agreement. Very well, said Zixperin, his carapace shifting to the deep red of solemn oath. We will bear witness to what we have seen. The galaxy must know what humanity has sacrificed to protect us all. As their ship departed Earth orbit days later, officially released from human custody with a diplomatic reprimand, Zixperin gazed at the holographic map of human space. The blank spot no longer represented a cartographic failure to him, but a monument to humanity's silent vigilance against cosmic horror. The void on the map wasn't empty at all. It was filled with humanity's defiance against the darkness between worlds, a defiance that had protected countless species who never knew they were in danger. And soon, the galaxy would learn the truth about why human space remained unmapped, and why humanity deserved not just their respect, but their gratitude.